thanks to Sinn Féin for the motion. I note that I think all of us have put a similar motion before the House in the past, and sometimes you might feel like you're banging your head off a brick wall, but I actually think it's really important that we keep revisiting this issue and go back to it again and again and again, mostly because the government are failing the population on this. Businesses get the supports, and then businesses get the reduced bills from the energy companies. There are market explanations for that. They're very convoluted. You'd want to have a degree in economics to begin to understand them or to begin to impart it, but then that doesn't make it logical, and it doesn't make it sensible, and it doesn't make it acceptable that market rules can drive up the cost to ordinary consumers to an immoral level, and at the same time talk about the prices will come down, the prices will come down. Well, I had a briefing from Electric Ireland in the recent past, and they're very doubtful that the curve that is now dancing around energy prices is the graph that is dancing around energy prices is going to come down at all. What they said, it'll most likely it'll dance. It'll go up and down, and it'll go up and down, and it'll go up and down. And I note that from the point of view of the government, this and the housing crisis gets blamed mostly on Putin's war. And I have no doubt that the invasion of Ukraine has had a major impact. But that doesn't really explain it. It doesn't really explain why in the 30s and 40s we could produce electricity, deliver it all over the country at a low price to citizens, why we could build tens of thousands of houses across the state on scale and give people proper, well-built, well-designed public housing across the land. And we can't do it in the 21st century. And this country is the third richest country on the planet, according to the World Bank, per head of the population. And that means that the heads of the population that you and I deal with, Cathaoirleach, as elected representatives, are not the heads that are the wealthiest, the third wealthiest in the world. They are among the poorest in Europe and the most hard done by, because they struggle with the cost of living crisis in the way that they do. And the other thing I think we need to keep an eye on is food inflation. It's running at 16% in the last 3 months. And I brought it up here last week with the Department of Social Protection, because food inflation is now having a major impact on the delivery of school meals, because the companies who deliver them are struggling to deliver them at the amount that the state gives them per child. So we've major challenges ahead of us, but the one we're talking about tonight is the high energy costs. And I think as people's gas and electricity winter bills have come in recent weeks, it's clear that the previous one-off payments and proposed measures will barely scratch the surfaces for all those people. And allied to the panic they feel about the lifting of the eviction ban today, there's now terror in their faces on the bills they're facing on gas and electricity. And like I say, I'm struck by the fact that these two things are linked, but at the root cause of them is the free market and the deregulation, in particular tonight, of the energy system and the profiteering of major corporations. Between September 2021 and 22, the price of food items rose by 18.7% on average, but some items, including dairy, have risen to very, very high, and some of them as much as 49%. Energy in the 2022 annual profits for the 5 largest integrated private sector oil and gas companies, Chevron, ExxonMobil, Shell, BP and Total Energies, profits have soared up to 195 billion in 2022, nearly 120% more than the previous year, and the highest level in the industry's history, and that industry has some history. In the first 6 months of 22, the Electricity Supply Board's profits more than tripled to 390.3 million. Operating profits at Bord Gáis Energy increased by 74% in the first 6 months of 2022. Corrib Gas profits trebled in the first 6 months of 2022 to 560 million. And I heard the Taoiseach made an extraordinary statement in this chamber last week. And it wasn't about ending the eviction ban, and that the ending the eviction ban was not in the public interest, nor was it that free public transport isn't a good idea, but it was even the more extraordinary claim that the ESB never had a not-for-profit mandate. And he also said, unlike others, I am not ideological. Perhaps he missed out on the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, the era of Reagan and Thatcher and neoliberalism that privatised everything that the state ran efficiently, and in particular, in this case, the energy system. The rip-off pay-as-you-go companies that we see today, the district heating systems that charge commercial rates to a huge amount of residents, including some of them living in public housing bodies. We did see the remit of the ESB change in the early 2000s from not-for-profit to the present commercial position in a newly created competitive market. And it removed its aim as providing the cheapest, the most efficient and the much praised market that the ESB delivered before it was deregulated. People in this country paid the least amount before that deregulation in the whole of Europe for their consumption of energy at home. That was completely, the change in that was completely justified on the basis, the usual capitalist crap, that if you have competition, you will get lower prices, more efficiency and better choices. Well, we have that competition now. The prices have been driven up to an astronomical level. People don't get much choices because even though they can change from one electricity company to the other, they're not getting seeing the benefit of that anymore. It was pointed out by an academic called Sinead Mercier last year that the ESB was forced to artificially increase its prices to attract competitors in a new energy market that the state spent millions in creating. And when the ESB's statutory requirement to operate on a not-for-profit and break-even basis was repealed in 2001, electricity prices skyrocketed, energy poverty increased, leading to an annual 2,800 excess of cold-related deaths and a sharp spike in disconnections. If that wasn't ideological and the outcome of it wasn't very political, then I don't know what is, because it was driven by prioritising the needs of profit over the needs of people. The Taoiseach mightn't accept that, but windfall profits, energy poverty and the current crazy market system will ensure high gas prices for ordinary people and high energy price for ordinary people, regardless of the wholesale markets. And all of these are the result of the privatisation and the liberalisation of that energy market. Today, we have the bitter fruits of those so-called reforms, massive profiteering, like I've just pointed out, both in food and energy, and reluctance, if not hostility, by this government and others to retake control over vital systems, to reverse privatisation and liberalisation. Yes, we want windfall taxes and profits. We want once-off payments to help the poor, to be able to pay their bills, but that won't deal with the root causes of the crisis. We need to retake control of the energy system in this country. It's called renationalisation. It means restoring the not-for-profit mandate to the ESB. All the customers would flock to the ESB because they'd be able to charge lower prices, and then we take control particularly of the renewable energy sector that we need to build up quickly, very, very quickly and on a grand scale to deal both with the climate crisis and the energy crisis. So reversing neoliberal policies, both as a response to the energy crisis and to the climate crisis, is the thing we need to do. The entire marketisation of energy makes meaningful climate action and price control impossible. It'll only get worse and worse. And that's what People Before Profit will be launching a document in the coming weeks on how we can renationalise the energy sector. I also want to say that as part of the coalition for the cost of living, the Social Democrats and Sinn Féin are also part of it, along with trade unions, students' unions and housing bodies, that we will be organising a major demonstration against this government's high cost of living charges for the 1st of April. April Fool's Day, Minister, the day we want to say to you, who are you fooling? And why are you not doing something to control the cost of living for ordinary people? Against the background is the vast, vast profits that we've just gone through. So it's shameful, it's immoral and it's outrageous that it isn't being done to service the population of this country.